Good afternoon and happy Monday, courageous school leaders. Dr. D here, and it is time for what are your thoughts? Right? Like, this is the time to engage in some conversation, some back and forth dialogue as you are engaging in the chat, and a time for me to share my thoughts around a specific topic. And what I do every week is use an article to kind of ground us in the conversation. And the point is to actually kind of find how to help change your lens as a school leader to know and see that there is data in every single thing that we do. And all of the articles are related to education, specifically urban education. And so, again, my name is Dr. D, and my passion is to empower urban school leaders, right? To lead with confidence and leading with confidence so that you can really shift your instructional culture and feel affirmed in the work that you are doing. And so, as a product, and advocate of public education, I believe that we have the power to change the systems that continually oppress our most marginalized students, our Black and Brown babies, who are always an afterthought and sometimes not even that. Um, and so, the purpose of this weekly session is to connect issues that impact your school leadership. And so, we want to move from being reactive and being more proactive and dismantling the status quo collectively, right? I believe that knowledge is power. And when we come together and we put our minds together, we can actually shift this paradigm that we see happening, that's occurring in our public school system. So, let's jump right in. Today's article, especially given the time of the year, this is the end of the school year, right? We have schools that are in testing mode, and we want to end the year strong. I firmly believe when I was a school principal, I'll never forget my first year as a school principal. The staff were like, once testing was over, they were kind of like, hey, school year is over. It's time to chill out and relax. And my response to them is, do you have 100% of your scholars reading on grade level? Right. That means we don't have time to chill out and relax. There's work to do. And 180 days of school is exactly that. 180 days of school. We don't have time for that fluff. We don't have time for testing is over for let's relax. We still have work to do, and there are ways that we can do that. And today, I really want to lift that up and highlight an article that's really geared for teachers. But I want to create this lens of how leaders can help support what this article is saying should be occurring in school buildings, right? To make sure that we are, uh, you know, continuing the learning until the last bell rings, right? So we're going to dive into how school leaders can um, support this work and helping teachers remain focused and reimagine learning, right? Like, um there is this, th- what needs to be known and understood is that there is always going to be discomfort when transformation is occurring. That's one. And that disruption has to occur before the transformation, right? That's going to bring on the discomfort. And this time of the school year is a really perfect time to start experimenting and trying out different instructional strategies and different um, approaches to teaching for students, and ways that you can do that as a school leader are really critical. And let's just dive into it, right? So, um, the question I have for you is, how can school leaders inspire this shift and what that might look like for teachers during these last weeks of school, right? Um, there's a lot that can be done. So let me share the article first, and then talk about how school leaders can actually support with this. So this article is from ASCD, and it is. Ending the School Year Strong by Kimberly M. Parker. I will put the link in the chat at the conclusion of this live. And so she says the same thing. Now is not the time to dial back, right? Our Black and Brown babies need 100%, 180 days of the school year. And so this article really talks about, it provides some steps that teachers can use. And one of the steps is to reflect and pause, right? This is critical because I talked about this a lot in previous lives where reflecting is absolutely critical as a school leader because we're dealing with human beings, right? And so we have to have this constant practice of reflection to make sure that we are staying aligned with our core values, and we're walking in harmony with that, right? And to really be honest about how we are engaging with other people without including students. And so that reflection piece is critical. One of the things I came to understand as a school leader was, um, there were a couple of teachers who would hold on to things such as, putting so much effort into instruction and planning, and it not working out right, and their class not moving the way they wanted them to, or those kinds of things, because they're really invested, but they hold on to it. And so this step is like reflect and release. Reflect on what it was as a teacher and let it go, right? Reflect on it and use that data to help you in terms of planning for the next time, and then let it go. Like, don't hold on to that emotional piece because it will leave you stagnant. And that is not what we want in education. So making peace with what isn't working is critical, right? um, and she talks about this and lifts it up with some examples here. So another step that she talks about is to recalibrate our expectations for the remainder of the school year. Consider the following questions. She says, what do your students need right now? What are your students telling you? Right? Listen to the babies. They're talking and telling you stuff. How can you build and sustain a relationship with your students that enables them to be honest about how they're experiencing your class and what they need from you in this exact moment? Now, this is an honest reflection that can maybe hurt. Like, sometimes the truth will hurt, but you cannot take it personally. You have to what? Recalibrate. You're collecting the data and you're recalibrating based on the information that you're getting back. This is our qualitative data. This data is so critical to help with the quantitative piece, right? Um, and so, will they tell you the truth? If they do, what will you do and what will you say? Right? Again, this is connecting to a previous live where I'm talking about emotional intelligence and being aware of how you are reacting to things, events, people, um, so that it is productive. And so, again, while this article is speaking about the teachers as a school leader, how are you providing the time and space for this? Are you using time during collaborative planning? Because that should still be happening, where teachers are coming together and talking about how they're collecting this data and what they like, sharing ideas on what they can do next, right? Um, the third thing, excuse me, that this author is talks about is reimagine, don't remediate. Reimagine, don't look backwards, look forward. What standards and assessments are coming up, right? Because even after testing, the standards still need to be taught in preparation for the next school year, right? We have to keep teaching the standards for the grade level our babies are in. We know that we have remediation, but the end of the school year is not time for remediation, right? You can do those in pockets when you have, for example, a workshop model, right, where you are creating the time and space for those remediation pieces. But your entire instructional day as a teacher should not be about remediation. You still need to be teaching on those grade level standards. And school leaders have to create the time and space for teachers to continue to plan in the way that they need to, so that students are getting their grade level standards in preparation for next year. The fourth thing is prioritize the most important rituals and routines, right? And this is critical. What she says here is consider what you want students to know and be able to do in the remaining months of the school year and how you can reinforce and create a community that centers students, right? How are you going to center students in the learning towards the end of the school year? What things can you do? Like, are you having a time for reading once a week, or like having a book of the month that you like? What? How are you creating a culture in your classroom? And for school leaders, this is how are you creating a culture in your building for the learning? The last thing she says is to decide and do as a newsletter, right? Um, that and this is where the bravery piece comes in, right? Like the current political landscape is banning books and banning classes and all of these things that we won't get into right now. Because that's a bunch of lives back to back that we need to talk about. But we have how are we supporting the learning and the reading, the exposure of different cultures and different perspectives um, with our students, right? So this is where we have to be brave and stand up for our baby's right to read. So decide on something and do. That was just an example, but decide something, and this is where the disruption before transformation takes place. Decide on something and then act on it. And this could mean that your teachers are coming together to say that as a school, we are deciding on this thing, and then they're taking action on it, right? For the remainder of the school year. So it's setting a tone for closing out the school year and becomes an expert like it's something that will be picked up again in August or September whenever your district starts school again. So the school year isn't over, everybody. It ain't over. Okay, there's still work to do unless 100% of your students are reading on grade level proficient or better, because we all know the proficiency level from state to state is still not a high expectation. That level is low. Are they reading beyond that? If they're not, then there's still work to do. It ain't over. Um, so let's talk about how, well, like what you as a school leader can do to impact consistent instruction, right? Um, So one of the things that can be done and this is something that can be done and gathered throughout the school year is piloting like new instructional techniques. And you and your staff are gathering these new instructional techniques throughout the course of the school year. It's not something that you do like, oh, at the end of the year you decide to sit down and like find new instructional techniques. You're doing this during your looking at student work protocols, through your, data teams data cycle, like this is happening throughout the school year. And so what you're doing is creating a bank of new instructional techniques that you've been implementing all year long. And so at the end of the year, it's an ideal time for teachers to try out a technique they haven't used yet, or new methods um, without the pressure of high stakes testing, right? Um, and so encourage as a school leader, you can encourage your teachers to experiment with techniques that they've either been curious about or haven't had a chance to implement, right? So for example, one of the things that other school districts use, that a lot of school districts use, not other, flipped classrooms, right? Like teachers assigning instructional videos for homework, and then having class time for hands-on activities and group discussions, right? This again is a high level expectation. Now, it may not work, like it may not suit your classroom, and that's fine too. But to try it out, you may find that there are a lot of students that are really like, "What? I could watch the video at home, and then in school, I'm doing something else that's connecting to the video that I watched." They're always on their social media platforms. Like, be creative and put the video on a platform that you know they would want to go on. Create a YouTube channel, right? Another way is a hybrid model, a hybrid learning model. So you can experiment with a blend of in-person and digital learning for combinations of to find effective combinations that fit your students in your classroom, right? and for school leaders that will fit like the learning modalities of the students in your building. So share your thoughts as I'm talking, and you're watching the replay. Just share your thoughts and or some experiences that you've had with anything that I have said thus far. Another uh, way school leaders can support teachers in powering ahead and ensuring that they are deciding and doing and prioritizing the most important rituals is to utilize like an interdisciplinary approach. This can be planned throughout the year, right? Um, it actually has to be planned throughout the year. Um, the interdisciplinary approach is what should be happening throughout the school year anyway, right? Like starting it at the end of the year, though, gives teachers an opportunity to get their feet wet, like to experience what this is like if it's not happening in your building already, right? So encouraging teachers to collaborate across the subject areas to create this interdisciplinary learning experience for students. So like science and art integration, for example. Students can learn about scientific concepts through art projects, right? Like eco-friendly sculptures, that teach about recycling, um, history and literature tie-ins can also be connected, right? Like coordinate history and English concepts through art, or coordinate the English lessons so that students can read literature from an era they're studying in history, deepening their understanding and engagement, and they see the connections between and among content. That is what learning is. It is not a single, like, we don't learn that way. We learn by making connections, taking new information and making the connections to information we already know. So why do we continue to teach in this singular way? So this interdisciplinary approach, you can begin to introduce it now and get teachers really fired up about it because students will get fired up about it because they will be able to see the connections, right? And that's something that has to be planned throughout the year. And once you get better at it, you actually plan through the year. And then that leads into incorporating student led learning projects. Because if the whole school is working on an interdisciplinary approach, its natural progression is going to be student led learning projects. I cannot express to you how important, not only important, but how impactful this is for students. The middle school I was the principal of had an approach of student-led learning, um, conferences and projects and portfolios, and it was absolutely amazing to hear students, fifth grade students, sixth, seventh, eighth grade students talk about what they learned, how they know they learned it, what they need to improve on, and what their plan is to improve on those things. This metacognition is what we want from kids. We want them to be aware of their learning, right? So as a school leader, you can empower your teachers to take to allow students to take the reins. And I know this is scary because as educators, the old school way of doing things is the teacher's in control of everything. And the teacher is still essentially in control, but allowing students to take the reins of what that looks like, right? The teacher's setting it up and the students are taking the information and running with it, right? So this approach can invigorate the learning environment that provides insights into what students are interested in, right? What potential new directions for curriculum are there? And remember, the curriculum that we buy from companies who don't know anything about your kids, right? Only know about the learning standards, but don't know anything about your kids, cannot provide the rich instruction that your teachers can, right? We have to get our staff less dependent on curriculum and more dependent on the learning standards. We have to. One of the ways that we can incorporate student led learning projects is through a capstone, right? Like students work on a project that will encapsulate their learning. throughout the school year, right? Which they present to a wider audience. At my middle school, we called it not student-led conferences. That was student-led conferences happen, they replaced parent-teacher conferences. Um, but we had the end of the year portfolio presentations, right? This is something that integrated all across all subject areas. There were rubrics that students knew they had to use to grade themselves on the the artifacts that they put in their portfolios. This requires planning at the beginning of the school year, right? All the staff come together and say, based on the curriculum and the scope, what is it we want students to know and be able to do at the end of the year? And what are some of the rubrics and expectations that we have for students along the way? And teachers are using that to support students in their own, like being taking the reins of their own learning. It is absolutely amazing to see. If I ever am a principal at another school, that's absolutely hands down has to be a part of the school. Having student-led learning projects. And so for now at the end of the school year, you can begin with the interdisciplinary approach and maybe have like a little like a presentation of what that like whatever small project can be done from the interdisciplinary approach for the last day of school, the last week of school, right? But start that now. Another way that you can have student led learning projects is a passion project. Like allocate time for students to explore a topic that they're interested in, right? Maybe at the beginning of the school year when you take those inventories from them, you pull that back out. Well, you should be pulling it out throughout the course of the year, but the end of the year, you're pulling it out again, right? And you are pulling it out using like the school resources and guidance from from your colleagues um, to help create a product or a presentation for that passion project. So for me, I am green in every way possible. I think that our planet is very important. I recycle. I try to encourage people to recycle. So if that were me, I would do a project. My passion project would be like how to get find out, well, like for me, would be to find out how to get more people to understand the need for recycling, right? And then like how climate change is impacting us and our world. So, um, and everyone can be engaged in it, not just students, but the teachers can be creating it. The principal, you as the principal, can be creating, or a school leader, or a dean, or and so share your thoughts here. Tell me what you're thinking. I know I'm talking really fast because I don't want to go over the time that I've allotted for this. And the last thing I want to mention that you as a school leader can do is something that you've heard me talk about over and over again. You've either seen it in my posts, you've heard it in videos. Um, you have to absolutely, at the end of the school year, gather feedback and reflect. In my group coaching program, the Innovative Leader, part of the curriculum includes how to incorporate um, cyclical reflection time as a school leader and what to do with that time, how you are reflecting on it, and what are the next steps from that reflecting, right? One protocol that you can use is stop, start, continue for reflection. Um, then that should be happening throughout the course of the year. But one of the things that's really important here for you as a school leader is you can gather this feedback from your staff to gather this valuable feedback from your staff and your teachers about strategies that they have experienced, right? The feedback can guide your planning for professional learning for the next year. This is the perfect time to gather as much feedback as possible to help you over your summer planning, because that's what's coming up next, right? People think, oh, you work in education, you have the summer off, you're so lucky. Yeah, no, actually, the summer is a whole lot of deep thought work, right? And I know that you're gearing up for that. I'm sure you're gearing up for vacation first. I hope so. And then gearing up for the deep thought work. But in the meantime, you are still gathering this qualitative data to help inform how you are planning for your professional learning, right? One of the ways you gather it is we know surveys and discussions, right? Implementing an end of the year survey for students and teachers to share thoughts on new approaches and improvements. One of my clients, we talked about how um, instead of waiting for the district's end of the year climate survey to administer a survey throughout the school year, right? It could be just 5 questions, the same 5 questions to staff every quarter, because you want to see where things are changing. And it's not long; it may be 5 questions, it could be 7 questions, no more than 10 questions. You're collecting data, and trust me, your staff wants you to know. Make it anonymous. Your staff will be very honest with you about how they're feeling about the trajectory of the school. So staff surveys and discussions are really important. And then having reflection meetings. You know, there's some people who feel really comfortable, and the goal is for everybody to feel comfortable, right? And because you've created such a safe space for your staff, um, to have these reflection meetings. You know, a part when you already have your collaborative meetings in place, you take a portion of those collaborative meetings to reflect on the experiences throughout the year, discuss what worked, what didn't work. Again, the stop, start, continue protocol is perfect for this, right? Because you don't even need to talk about that. You're just writing it down, and then you are reflecting on it as a group as you're looking at each one of um, those components of stop, start, continue, and having a conversation about it. Right. This is really important because one, and again, I'm gonna go back to other lives I've done about emotional intelligence. It helps you become more connected to your staff because you're doing that throughout the year. You are building your emotional intelligence muscle when you are providing time and space for your staff to actually reflect and share with you about the things that they feel worked well, what didn't work well, and what things they can begin to introduce. It's really important that you are encouraging that spirit of innovation in your staff. Share your thoughts. Tell me what you're thinking about what I'm saying. Tell me or share with us how you are doing any one of these things in your building, or if you're interested in doing any of these things in your building, right? And if you're interested in how the Innovative Leader Program can help support you in this work, type the word ready in the comments and I will connect with you so that we can have a conversation to see if the Innovative Leader Program is the best fit for you. We start this summer, actually in June, in preparation for the school year. So it's limited space for the program. So if you're interested in it and how to really learn and how to build your data lens and data analysis skills in collecting both hard and soft data to help plan for next year, comment the word ready below in the comments and I'll connect with you so that we can have some time to talk. So I know I said a lot. I was talking really fast. But remember, by encouraging experimentation and reflection in the final weeks, you're keeping the instructional momentum going, right? Because it ain't over, right? You have to keep it going. You're keeping it going, but also laying the foundation, uh, like laying the groundwork for future innovations, right? And teaching and learning, encouraging your staff to become less dependent on the curriculum that bought curriculum and more dependent on the learning standards and what that looks like. So this proactive approach enhances the current educational experiences that are happening in your building right now. And it prepares your school community for a future that's embracing like continuous improvement, adaptability, innovation. That's what we need, right? But we also need to go back to what I like to say is the old school stuff, right? Like, go back to the learning standards. Go back to UBD. Help build, you know, our staff's muscle for understanding the learning standards on a really deep in a really deep way. Okay. So even though it's the end of the school year, and it's a time to start wrapping up, we still keep teaching to that last bell rings and using these strategies that were mentioned, right? As a school leader, which is like piloting and our piloting instructional techniques such as like a flipped classroom or a hybrid classroom, um, incorporating uh, student learning projects, right? A capstone project, a passion project, interdisciplinary approaches, science and art integration, history and literature integration. It's just a natural fit. And then gathering feedback, right? All of this is data for you as a school leader and your instructional leadership team in terms of planning for next year. So share your thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. Um, and what I will do is share this article in the comments so that you can read it yourself. It's a really quick, easy read. And I just want to thank you for, spending time to watch the replay or hitting the like button or making a comment. I really appreciate that. And let's continue the conversation. Okay. That's all I got for today, leaders. So let's try to implement these strategies and let's see what difference it makes, right? Like, again, disruption precedes the transformation that is needed. So keep pushing, okay? Your leadership is absolutely necessary. I will catch you on the next episode next Monday. And so keep leading with your heart and keep leading courageously and advocating for yourself and for your most marginalized kids in your building. Okay. Have a great afternoon.